Welcome everyone. I'm Melanie Adamson. I'm the CEO of Alder & Co. We're a growth marketing agency and we focus exclusively on climate tech. Wanted to bring everyone here today. Lorna and I were having a conversation at LA ClimateWeek around how do we provide the tools and the resources for entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs who need that extra bit of confidence going out and getting money, especially during pitch times. And so I was talking about Pacific Northwest Climate Week, and we thought, okay, let's put a panel together. We'll get a bunch of people who have been through these experiences and can talk about, what they've done and some best practices. And then in this group, we can just have a nice, frank, open conversation. And so I appreciate you all being here today. I want to first say special thanks to our sponsors, 90, for allowing us to have this space. Thank you so much. 90. And also to Silicon Valley Bank. John, you want to come up and give a little pitch?
Yeah. It probably look a little different than our rooftop happy hour. So I'm with Silicon Valley Bank Seattle. And I work on all the climate tech stuff locally. It's all Series A, Series D stage startups. Super excited to be here, and I think PNW ClimateWeek has been awesome. Super great, very organized this year. I know there's a lot of folks kind of on the volunteer function that did a lot.
So thank you to them. All the refreshments are from SVB, so appreciate them for being here. I'm going to go ahead and ask our panelists to introduce themselves and to share a little bit about how they got here.
Hi everyone, my name is Alona Solina. I'm one of the co-founders and partner of CurvePoint Capital. We're climate investors, later stage, think about more like Series C, and we're not equity, we're debt providers, so completely different kind of approach to various challenges that climate community is experiencing, and we really think it's a big capital gap for capital intensive businesses and hardware solutions where equity is not always the case. You need to give up 20% of your company to buy equipment, so that is, I think, a very growing niche for this specific sector, and that's what CurvePoint is trying to fix. But because I'm a late stage founder, investor, I don't have a lot of female CEOs or founders when I see my pipeline, but when I go to accelerators and incubators, they all proudly say 30% of female founders, and we have a strong, so I'm like, we're losing them. We're losing them from pre-seed to Series C. So it's like, what's happening? And a lot of different things happening. We choose family over business, or we're not fundraising for, the statistics of 2%. Like, so how can I personally help to fix that? And to Melanie's point, I found that specifically in climate too, there are a lot of engineers, scientific backgrounds, so smart, so knowledgeable, but they just didn't have time in the last 15, 20 years to learn about freaking balance sheet. It's like, they don't know what some of snobby investors are asking them, not because they're not smart enough, it's just because they didn't have a place to go and learn this very simple concepts. So I've been working a lot with early stage female founders and providing them my time to just walk through that, talk about what we as an investor are looking for, what some of the concepts mean. And yeah, that's kind of how we partner together, and I do a lot of work for female founders, and so feel free to reach out and get a call and see how can I help for me to get a pipeline of female founders at Series C's and beyond. Thank you.
This is good to follow because I met Alina by doing a pitch to her when we were out raising. So there's a few.
She didn't take my money though.
I'm Nicole Carr, CFO of Circuit. Circuit is a microtransit company. We partner with cities to provide critical transportation services. For the locals here, you might be aware of our partnership with Bellevue. We run the bellhop service over in Bellevue. We're looking to grow in the region. We use all electric fleets of vehicles and employee drivers to move millions of riders a year without burning an ounce of fuel. So something we're very proud of. Thank you. I started my career on the corporate side, traditional accounting, finance background, and in 2018, I made the transition to venture-backed businesses. So since then, I've worked across 2 different businesses to close 4 equity rounds, 3 debt facilities, raising about $175 million in capital. So I have had a lot of practice in pitches. Happy to share my experiences and some of the things I've learned along the way today.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, my name is Jackie Liu, I go by JL. I serve as a Chief Growth Officer for 5T Wealth. It is a wealth management family office firm that is based in Napa, California. So did come from the wine country today. Sober, yeah, for now. But with that said, I think the unique part of what I do is we do dabble a lot into the pitch deck, and one of the components that we do is on that family office space. So what essentially is family office space is we do the whole 9 yards, from estate planning, tax planning, philanthropic oversight, risk management, lifestyle concierge services. So in some way, we actually do some sort of matchmaking. We take a lot of the founders that are our clients and we match it with our ultra high net worth to be able to see if there is some sort of passion that they want that's aligned with their values. I would say you would use us as more of a quarterback, your financial COO, because the reality is whether you're actually raising capital or during or post liquidation, having that alignment with making sure that you have a wealth advisor or a family office with your attorney, with your CPA, that's going to be very critical. So at least for my practice, I've worked very closely with a lot of founders. I host curated events in Napa to be able to sync up a lot of the VCs as well as investors and founders and startups. I do think that's a fuel to our economy, so there's a lot of belief in that. How did I get into the position that I am in today? Having raised as Filipino American, there were 2 paths, either another Filipino nurse, a Kaiser, or a pediatrician, but it was more of a personal experience that got me here. My grandfather, who worked very hard at United Airlines, had a lot of savings, but he mainly saved regular savings account, 25 basis point. So after cancer, we realized that he had no documents, living trust, will, estate planning. So a lot of that actually was taken away. So I pivoted my career path from the medical world to getting into more of the business administration things and finance. So worked for Capital Group, which is really one of the money managers that's based in LA, and learned a lot of the ropes of being able to run a family office, run private client services, and the boutique side of that. I know that I'm not probably your audience, but as you think about, building a company, or what does that look like from putting together your pitch deck, or what does that look like for pro forma? Is this a viable business for you to invest in? That family office component is going to be critical for you to make sure that if you are bootstrapping your business, is it critical that you have the right information? You have, competing priorities. What does that look like for you? Do you have the time to be able to do that? And that's essentially what we do with a lot of the multi-entrepreneurs that we actually work with. Again, Napa based, but our clients are from coast to coast. Hence why I'm here in Seattle, because I'm actually here to do a due diligence for a warehouse for a client that's looking into investing in a green tech company in Oregon. So we do that hands-on approach, personal approach, to be able to say, hey, we're putting 2 thumbs up on this investment. You can go ahead and move forward, and then we'll go ahead and make that introduction. So great opportunity to be here. Looking forward to your questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Shrina Karani and I'm the managing partner of Snowcap. We're a deep tech climate fund that's based right here in the 90. We have offices here, which is fantastic. We really focus on companies that are making things cheaper, that still work better, and that happen to have an incredible climate impact. That's sort of the way that we think about the world, is that every company really is a climate company, right? I think one of our partners are right here. So one thing that John often says is that the way that you look at your phone, you don't call it a smartphone anymore. And I think the way that we think about companies is, right now we call them climate companies, but like, what is a climate company? Every company needs to reduce their costs, they need to reduce their inputs, the energy that's going into them. And if we can sort of think about how to make the world work better while making things cheaper and just better for everyone, I think that's something that we're very excited to invest in. So that's a bit of what we do. In terms of how I got here, so my background is actually as a mechanical engineer, so it seems like our entrepreneurs, from what I understand. So sitting in your shoes, right? Trying to build a company that was making the world work better, and I had to do the fundraising slog. I think we had a spreadsheet of over 100 VCs, got turned down by most of them, but was able to raise a couple $1 million and actually build a company. And after we exited, I realized that I didn't know very much about the financial space. So when you talk about like, how do you put those documents together? How do you make sure you have everything in order? I didn't really know what I was talking about, and I wanted to fix that. And I also enough of an ego to think that I could do a better job than what all those other investors were doing. I was like, they don't understand all these problems. They don't understand what we need to be doing. And so I was like, let me go to the other side. What better way than to become a VC myself? So I led the sustainability thesis for a fund out of the Bay Area for a number of years, and just learned the ropes. Held a lot of founder roundtables to figure out if my experience was unique, and I found out that it was not. And I think when we talk about the entrepreneurial journey, talk about building in climate, and we talk about specifically the journey as a female entrepreneur, it's incredibly challenging. And I think that the data shows that, right? The 2% number in terms of total amount of capital raised. But I think that there's a lot of tools that I think through this conversation we're going to be able to help, hopefully many of you in this room, and just generally be able to help you do what you do best, which is build your company and make sure you have the financial resources to do it. I'm based in Los Angeles, so the governor of California has appointed me to run the venture capital program for the state, investing in climate justice and equity, as well as underrepresented fund managers, and also have the opportunity now to really support a lot of those same communities in Los Angeles. So that's my story.
Thank you. So based on one of the things you just said, and this is a question for everyone here on the panel, what's one of the biggest misconceptions, I guess, female entrepreneurs might have, and how do you overcome that? Anyone can go first. Or
I will say from just perspective of investor and listening to a lot of stories from founders, sometimes it's just the energy you walk into the room and you pitch something, and depending on how the storytelling is going, a lot of stuff, the feedback is like, oh, it's cute. And the reason why is just because we try to talk about something with solving the problem versus like start to talking about numbers and trajectory and like what are you actually getting people into, and then talk about impact of your business. And I find the same with investment, like I'm fundraising for my fund, so it's a similar thing. If I am starting to talk about climate and impact and kind of decarbonization stories, I lose maybe like 70% of people if they're not in that space and they put me in a very specific bucket. But if I talk about cost efficiency and it's just building better companies and it's energy efficiency, like using different kind of framework, and then at the last I will talk about impact. I will not be cute anymore and like actually selling a good business, and it's just like that energy that you bring into the room. So, and plus sometimes like, yeah, you walk into the room full of men and how you can relate to them. So my go-to is talk about sports. You just like figure it out as you go, but sports was my way in a long time. Now it's a little different, but so how to relate to the room. And I think we live in a very interesting time when you can learn a lot about a person before you meet them, because we all do podcasts, we all do panels, we write articles, investors specifically, so you can learn so many things about their personal opinions. So just doing that homework helps a lot to relate first, and then you start pitch the company and kind of get them on board. So that's kind of my view from fundraising for the fund and just listening to a lot of stories. Yeah.
I would add a little bit on that one, because the truth is the bias is already there, right? When you walk into a room, a man that's pitching will likely get that over a woman. But statistically, when you talk about the great wealth transfer, that's going to be controlled by women. So we definitely need more women investors that are going to be writing checks that's catered to women only. Just because the ratio is so off, you have probably 2/3 that's actually going to men entrepreneurs, and please don't be offended by that, but those are the numbers, and that's the reality of it. So having more VCs that are women that are actually looking just solely on women entrepreneurs, that's really where it starts. There's a ton of grants. DAFs are going to be a big deal, so that's your donor advised funds. So the reality is you can go on the website, pull up half DAF, and take a look at some of these different private foundation or you could actually apply for it, and half of that would actually be donated through their DAF to be able to fund your cause. So I think just being able to do research on that, especially for women, there are a handful of grants that could help you fund the cause, especially if you're able to create a viable value proposition on what you're trying to accomplish and sticking to your core values and mission as far as how you would want to proceed with your organization and company.
I was going to say, in my role, I've typically partnered with a male founder, and am a partner in the room that's really representing the numbers. So it's kind of role reversal there, right? Where he comes in with a vision, and this has happened in two different roles. And I am the one that comes in and follows up the story and the narrative with solid figures. So I think it's maybe understanding your strengths and your weaknesses and making sure that you acknowledge those weaknesses and don't be afraid to tag in a partner that can fill in those gaps. But I have found that having two people in the room for pitches, can have a more independent, fact-driven person that's behind the vision and the storyteller.
I will say, I think one of my common misconceptions when you're walking to a room and you're pitching, let's say a 50-year-old man, sorry if there's other 50-year-old men in here, you often think that they're smarter than you. You often think that they know what they're talking about, that they know your business, your market inside and out. And I think you have to walk into that room recognizing that you are the expert, that you know your business inside and out, that you know your numbers, that you know your market, that you know exactly what you're looking to build, and you understand the problem so intimately that you've built the best solution that's on the market, right? So I think walking into that room, I think part of that's confidence, right? Owning it. You know you are the expert, you know what you're building, and you know your business better than them. But also letting that show, right? Don't be, timid in recognizing that you can name drop, you can drop the numbers, you know exactly all the things that you need to talk about. Just sort of letting that shine, as opposed to, do I talk, the whole issue with mansplaining is that they talk about things that we already know, right? So you tell them what you think they might already know and just oversell it, right? Show them that you understand this through and through, and don't give them the opportunity to underestimate you.
Woo! Yes, and I will just back that a little bit more. Even female, male, doesn't matter. When you're fundraising, I think it's very important to find an investor that you're not kind of changing their view or opinion on that specific solution. You need to find someone who already knows that this is the solution, so you kind of finding the alignment. Because if you're trying to change someone's opinion in that room, that's a fail from day one. And it goes back to the confidence that if you believe that what you are selling is the solution, and 20 people, 100 people will tell you it's not, stick to your gut. Because other way, it's you are 1 in a million, and that's why your company will be successful. Trust yourself that this is the solution, because even if 100 people say no, it's not because you're wrong, it's because they just don't understand it, or they just don't get it at some point, because 100 first will get it, and you will not need to sell them on a solution. All you need to sell them is that you're the person to execute on that solution. So that's a very important piece, I think.
Yeah, just to tag onto that. The same way that you're going to be spending a lot of time doing customer discovery and understanding who your market is, exactly your customers' pain points, what they care about, you need to do investor discovery as well. So you need to understand where they're coming from, what their risk tolerance is, what their familiarity with the market or the solution might be. Because the same way that if you try to go to a customer and convince them that you need the product, otherwise, compared to them having that inherent pain point and looking for that solution themselves, it's just going to be a lot tougher. It's possible, but you're setting yourself up for a very painful road, because you're initially just going to be doing a ton of education before you actually even start pitching your company. So if you recognize that there's that long journey ahead of you and you have the runway and the time and the energy to educate people, great. If you don't, find people who already understand what you're talking about.
I have a lot of clients that have to spend a lot of time on the education side, and not every investor is the same. They don't always have a mechanical engineering background. How much time, there should be a base level though of education around the problem, the solution, your market. So how do you find that balance within your pitch deck?
for one, you really have to tailor it to who you're talking to, right? So I think that's where this investor discovery comes in. So a lot of the time when I was pitching, I think one of the mistakes that I made was, again, I assumed that they knew what I was talking about, and I realized they didn't have a mechanical engineering degree. They didn't fully understand the technology that I was building, and I really had to sort of pare it down to the, hey, ChatGPT, explain it like I'm 5, you know? And that might actually be a useful prompt. It's like, hey, I'm pitching an investor who knows nothing about this technology, who knows nothing about this market that I'm investing in. How do I sort of help turn my incredibly nuanced, potentially technical company into a very easy to understand, relatable thing, right? So at least for me, my mom came from India. Her English isn't great. She's not a technologist. And so I have to think about, like, how do I explain this to my mom? Like, how do I explain this in a way that she's going to get it? And then, you know, you level up for someone who's looking at hundreds of pitch decks, for someone who's, you know, obviously an investor. But just sort of thinking about it from that perspective of, this person is really not an expert in what you do. They're not an expert in the technology that you're using or the market that you're serving. And so how do you explain it to them so they can actually understand what it is that you're building? So I think some of it is, if you're pitching a deep tech company to a investor whose every single company in the portfolio is a SaaS company, you're not going to get very far. They're just not going to be open to the type of business model, to the type of capital expenditure, to just the entire sort of format of how your company exists. And so you're probably wasting your time. I will be proven wrong. There's going to be some SaaS investor somewhere that invests in a deep tech company. That will happen, of course. But for the most part, you're going to be wasting your time, right? And so I think that there's different things where you have to look at. I think a really good place to start is just their existing portfolio. Most of them have those companies on their websites. Just look through them and see what the business model is, see at what stage they invested. Did they already have revenue? Do they have customers? What does exit potential is complicated, so I won't recommend that. But just look at the companies that they've invested in and see if what you're building can generally match that profile or not. And then if they do, then I think it's worth doing some of the education if they're not, you know, perfectly familiar with your market or with your tech. But there needs to be some semblance of a fit in order for it to be worth your time.
Do you have anything to add, Nicole? Did you want to?
No, one of the pre-questions was about if you could change something about.
That was my next question. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay,
So the
what I
question.
was thinking. My thought is like speed dating rounds of how do you very quickly narrow down the pool of contacts and investors that you're going to be working with to that right fit. And that is something that it's just part of the process, right? Is that you're not going to say no to introductions, you're not going to say no to calls, but you have to be really efficient with your time of understanding quickly if a second call is warranted, and you're going to move forward with that. So that is asking questions about knowing what is their sweet spot in terms of the check sizes they write, the stages that they invest in, the themes. That might not all like align at the time that you're talking. Those are great notes to, you know, you're essentially building a pipeline of all the investors that you might want to work with in the future. So don't lose those notes. But when you're on the clock and you're ready to raise, you really need to be efficient with your time, and making sure that you're talking to the right people is important.
I think one suggestion sort of on that note is I sometimes think about having sat on the entrepreneur side, but also now on the investor side, is to get the investor to sort of put their investing hat back on and thinking about what it's actually going to take to get them to write that check, right? And so for me, the question that I would often ask sort of at the end of the first investor meeting is, how do you see us fitting into your portfolio? Right? Like, get them to put that hat back on and think about, oh yeah, like, have we invested in a company like this before? Like, what would it take for us to actually invest in a company that is in a similar space, or that has a similar model, or that follows a similar sort of revenue milestones that we would need to see them hit before we actually invest in them? But just think about what some of those questions might be to actually get them to put their investing hat back on and take off that curiosity hat, because everyone wants to learn more. It's like, oh, tell me more about your tech, tell me more about this, tell me more about that. And they can spend like years asking you all of the questions, and that still won't be enough. And so at some point you need to be able to sort of control that conversation and get them to put their investing hat back on and think about what is it going to take for them to actually take that next step in their process.
So I have a question for Jackie. Why is it important to work with a wealth management family office?
So a lot of the ultra high net worth clients that we work with on that family office space, it's not necessarily them looking out for investments. they actually utilize the family office component for us to be able to go hunt, or they can provide an idea and say, hey, I am looking for a green tech company, and this is the check that I'm willing to write. For us, for that kind of dollar amount, it's going to be minimal if you take a look at the overall total portfolio of that client. So I've touched on a couple of things here. Earlier I mentioned that coordination of team approach. Very early on, we sit down with their CPA and as attorney. And I do want to just kind of address some of the misnomer. When they think of family office, you got to be worth 10 million, 20 million, 50 million, 100 million. Let me put it this way. Our biggest client, they started with us for just a couple of $1,000s. You know, they owned a small farm in Napa, and now we're actually managing the private foundation. It's through that guidance, it's more of a collaboration, 26, almost 3 decades of partnership that we have with them, and walking them through on some of the different things. And obviously someone that my predecessor had given that advice to them. So the key to it is that coordinated team approach. Those lawyers is going to be very critical to understanding what's in that cap table. What does that look like from a contract basis? Your tax efficiency strategy. How are we going to set up this entity? Is it an LLC, a C Corp? So those things are going to matter. The other piece as well is professional diligence and risk management. We go as far as actually inspecting an incubator program that they're a part of to be able to scope out that area just to get a better understanding. Is this an alignment? Because it's not a matter of you being a client to us. Fantastic, do business with us. But if there's no alignment on how we can invest in your future, the long-term strategy and invest in your business, then we might not be the right fit. So we're not an aggregator. We're not part of a commercial bank. That family office component for us, we protect that integrity. The other piece is that time savings integration. You don't have a lot of time doing a million things, managing complexities and competing priorities. Basically, you punch it back to your family office to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I need a CPA. My CPA is not doing any good. I'm backed 2 years I'm filing my taxes. Can you help us out? My attorney is about to retire. By the way, there's a shortage of CPA all over, so it's very difficult to find a really good one. But real estate attorneys and attorneys, we want to make sure that we give them that extension. The other piece that I do want to touch on is legacy planning. We are now dealing with a number of clients that are looking into exiting. So it's not just a matter of like, let me sell my current company now and take my millions away. No, it's actually a 5-year plan that we sit down with them, methodical, to see how do we design that structure? Do we set up a family foundation, and who is your target market? What's your mission statement? What are the guiding principles that you want out of that? So again, it's quite strategic. You know, the family office is not for everybody. Not many firms do have a family office, but to have one, I think it's quite a luxury to be able to just be able to delegate that to someone and do it for you.
Is there targeted stages that family offices typically invest in?
My favorite is startups. And part of that is we can easily pivot some of those conversations to potential investors and look for ways to be able to raise capital. Again, that alignment on the values and the mission that you're trying to achieve. Like green tech for me is something that I'm passionate about, and this was influenced by a client. So I think it's critical, like that you actually have to believe in that, because otherwise with startups, it's either going to do great or it's not, but you're at least part of that journey. I go through about 8 to 10 pitch decks every month. I have about a 30-second span to say I am interested or not. I flick through it, spill coffee, and then I'm like, just doesn't make sense because I was not the right audience for that pitch deck. You have to know I'm more of on the business side, so I need to know ROI. What does that look like? Tariffs are extremely important at the moment, given the climate, right? So you need to be able to gauge who is the audience that's receiving this. If I have an engineering background, by all means, but I don't. I'm more the numbers gal, so it needs to make sense profitability and from a risk management.
So let's talk a little bit about failure and how we navigate that, or reframe it along the way. How does that work?
We just, me and one of my partners, we just went through the exercise and we actually talked about difference in our definition of failure. Because for me, yeah, you fail, but it's a learning lesson, and maybe I'm too optimistic, but I definitely take it like, okay, this didn't work, let's try tomorrow like in a different way. And I learned from failures more than from successes. Like I've been investing for over a decade, probably deployed around $1 billion by now, and I did lose money. Like I lost in various deals, and I learned the most from those deals. Like what was wrong, Was it the team? Was it the business plan? What should I do differently next? And how I'm like shaping my underwriting differently later. So, I mean, yeah, it's disappointing. Okay, take a breather, take a bath, bottle of wine, 2, 3, I don't know, go to Napa, and just like go back, and then get back at it, because this is your best lessons. Because when you succeed, you all know too, when you have a success, the next day you're like a little hangover, and you're like, so what's next? Like, so how and keep progressing and getting there. And yeah, I'm fundraising for the fund as well, so it's a lot of no's, or later, not now, but it's like, okay, so how do I pivot, how I define the process better, how I'm maybe changing my storytelling a little bit, what actually the market is telling me. So it's all the process. So failures are good, like it's definitely helping you to navigate things a little better and get to the right person, because you only need one. And then once you get that lead on the company side, on the fundraising side, like others will follow. It's like, it's a very interesting psychological piece. Like once you get the lead, and Nicole can talk about it. Once you get the lead, or like you will be surprised that your phone will start ringing. So yeah, just focus on that. So I embrace the failure, I guess. Yeah.
Found that one of the things that attracted me to working with startups is just the optimism that's like always in the room, and it's exciting, and there's momentum with that. Sometimes it is hard to reflect on failures, right? You just want to say, okay, what's next? You hear no every day, but what am I going to do tomorrow? But I do think like giving your team the space to deal with the failures and the no's, but always coming back and having the retro. Right? It could be, you know, your team best. It could be that they just need a night. It could be that they need a week to really take it all in. But without talking about failures, which I think doesn't happen as often in this space as it does at other companies, is really important to learn the lesson and make sure it doesn't happen again.
I have to just say that failure is a data point, right? Like failure allows you to take a beat. It allows you to learn. It allows you to pay attention to what you've been doing and think about ways you could do it differently. So just echo a lot of what's been said here, but a lot can go wrong and a lot will go wrong, and that's okay. But just to remember to take a moment and to listen, to learn, and then just keep going.
Everything seems very urgent these days. How are you all prioritizing some of the things, and what kind of advice would you give to an entrepreneur?
There is no balance. It just doesn't exist. I mean, yeah, I think how you call this system, like the quadrant system, it's like high importance in urgent but not important. Like this kind of like, find a system that works for you. I have 25 different notebooks like laying around the house, like family calendar, company calendar, personal, like it's a lot, but just find the system that works for you and communicate. Planning, I think, especially at the company, you need to know how much cash do you have in a bank. You need to know what bills are you paying today, what bills are you paying tomorrow, how are you managing that. When is it like absolutely critical for money to come in, and you're always pitching. Even when you're not, you're always fundraising. You're always out there because you never know how long it will take you. So just knowing the numbers, to Nicole's earlier point, and just like really being on top of that, so you're not ended up like, oh, I have 50K bank account and I have a payroll tomorrow. Like, what am I gonna do? Because now you're like in the legal trouble. So it's just find a system that works with you personally and the team, because everyone works differently, and just be like, as a founder, CEO, like C-suite, you're like responsible not just for you in the business, but you're responsible for other people's lives as well, aka payroll. So it just be aware and plan along like very kind of longer term than just like weeks and months, and just always pitch, I guess. Yeah.
it's very easy to conflate being busy and being effective.
Yeah.
So you have days when you knock off 20 things off your list and you're like, man, that was a good day, but you realize you didn't actually move the business forward. So I some of the more tactical things that I've done, we get into our weekly executive meetings. If I look at the list, the agenda, and it's all tactical items, I'll put the top 3 items being our OKRs for the year or goals that we're trying to look at. So really trying to redirect when you feel like you're just running around, you're tired, you're doing a lot of things, asking yourself and asking your team if we're doing the right things. Yeah. Could I do just one thing today that actually moves the business forward and feel better about that?
Very similar, but I color code. So I have the reds, it's my administrative, yellow, I have to do it, but it's not sexy. And the green is, productivity for me. So, but it's also important to schedule your milestones, whether it's just going on a hike or a bike or just time with your friends, because that burnout is real. So one of the questions that I typically ask with founders and entrepreneurs, what's your burn rate? What does that look like? Because we can talk about numbers all day, but the missing component of it is a non-financial. How is your mental health? How is your physical health? Your emotional well-being? That overall well-being is going to be critical, because you as an entrepreneur and the founder, people are going to look up to you for that motivation and inspiration. And if you're burnt out, it's not going to work. So regardless of how many resources that you have, and that's typically the type of conversations that I would have with founder clients. It's like, how are you doing? I'm going to pick you up. Let's go. You need a massage. I'm not giving that to you because it's not professional, but we are going to schedule one. But I think that's very critical for you to be able to reward yourself. The other piece that I would say, and this has been very helpful with a lot of the founder clients that I have, I partner with a lot of fractional leadership firm. To hire a bookkeeper, that's great, but you need somebody that is a qualified CFO. If you can't afford a full-time CFO, fractional, project-based, so they can really run the numbers on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, and that's going to save you some dollars. Even on marketing pieces, right now we had a need for a founder to have a fractional CMO, because we need to uptick on that social media as well as the branding to be able to get some influencer involved in some of those things to be able to have some traction. This one is in the entertainment space. So a lot of those things I think you can strategize with your partners, and want to make sure that they have your back. And allow yourself to be able to be vulnerable, but make sure that you have those trusted individuals to be able to do so.
Yeah, it's a lot of great advice here. I think the last thing that I would add is, from the fundraising perspective, you can create a sense of urgency, but it often just doesn't really work for investors. Like if you're trying to tell them like, oh, I'm trying to close this round next week, and they're like, okay, good luck. Like that sort of sense of urgency, sort of flipping the script on them, doesn't necessarily always work unless they feel like they're really going to be missing out on something because there's other sorts of signaling someone else is coming into the round. You have to sort of create a sense of scarcity as opposed to a sense of urgency. And so just sort of thinking about that as a model from the fundraising perspective, in case you haven't heard it, if you're looking for money, you're going to get advice. And if you're asking for advice, you're going to get money. So just like, you really, from the fundraising side, a lot of it's relationship driven, a lot of it's trust, especially at the earliest stages. They're really investing in you as opposed to, of course, they're investing in the business, but they're investing in you to be able to pivot and navigate and build a big business. The sense of urgency is a little bit different when it's on the fundraising side. Of course, you need to make payroll, of course, you need to do all these things, and you have to plan to be able to make that happen. That's your job as a part of the C-suite. But just recognizing that it's more of an element of scarcity on the fundraising side that will really get an investor to start moving forward as opposed to a sense of urgency.
I'd love to open it up to questions if anyone has questions.
This question's for you, JL. You mentioned that family offices often prioritize like ROI when they're looking at what things to fund. Are there examples where you've seen something where the return isn't financial, so it's more impact?
I'm actually dealing with part of that big family office that is a client of ours, straight up passion project. He was ready to just invest XYZ dollar amount, and at the end of the day, it's my client's money. So even if we give them the ROI and the numbers, but if their passion is art, regardless what kind of art that is, we just have to kind of go with it and make sure that now we're managing risk to be able to hedge their investments, whether it's an upside or the negative side of things. But yes, we've been in situations to where the ROI did not make any sense, but ultimately it's our client's call. Even though we have discretionary on a lot of those funds, we still go back to the client because the relationship for us is much more important than the advice that we give them. They have to be comfortable in what we're giving them.
Right. And then kind of tying it in with the whole talk about relationships get you money, right? How do you get a relationship with a family office? Like, how does that even start?
You know, that's a really great question, because there aren't many family offices that are available. A lot of the commercial side, they have kind of gotten away with that. Even some of the big money manager. I think it's just networking. I mean, Helene here is a super connector. She's right over there, another founder as well. But it's just, especially for me personally, I do business first with women, and I need to be able to pay it forward. So from that on, it's just really building those relationships and making sure that you are intentional on the follow-up and the follow-through. When you say you're going to commit on doing something, get it done, because words do matter. From the family office, it's a matter of getting introduced to that family office and getting those introductions, and that's essentially what that is you can go online and look it up and do all of that, but you need to know somebody in that part of that family office to be able to get in the door and get those introductions. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're out and about looking we have a list of industries that they're very particular in, that they would want to invest in. Green tech happens to be one of them, climate tech, and that's why you're seeing more of me in many different spaces, because that's essentially what they're passionate about.
It is a great pool of capital, but it is a lot of introductions.
They often won't have a website or
They don't.
Right.
It's exactly. That's why it's hard for you to find it because they don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, fascinating, interesting. Thank you very much.
Great question. But happy to introduce you. Come to Napa.
That's the answer. Go to Napa.
If you're doing a raise, let's say like $2 million, what would classify as like the lead based on that number? Like once I get someone who's like, I'm in for 1, then it's easier for me to get the 4 for 250. Like what kind of numbers do you see as like a lead investor, would you say?
It's not always about the amount, right? So there are investors who will take down the whole thing. There are investors who will write a smaller check, but the definition of the lead is about the firm that will set the valuation, that will agree. And you need to understand that, let's say I'm a climate investor, right? So I hope I have some kind of a weight in the climate community if I say something. But if you completely out non-climate company and I'm telling you, yeah, you're worth 50 million and I will give you, like, people should not be taking me then serious, because like I don't know how to value you if I'm not expert in that industry. So yeah, to earlier point, if they're mostly investing in SaaS businesses, like what the hell do they know how to value deep tech company? But if they are trying to lead, then everyone else will be like, how are they leading and setting up valuation if it's not their bread and butter? So I think lead is more around like setting valuation versus like what chunk of the round they're taking. Usually it's a bigger chunk, for sure, but I think the valuation conversation and their weight and knowledge, because for me, I really value who is on a cap table, because I'm later an investor, and I'm like, okay, if these people invested in that, I know that they have a technical expertise, and they provided the value besides cash to actually get that company somewhere. So it's very important for me.
I think it's important to remember that when you're putting together a round, your follow-on investors, of course they're looking at you and they're diligencing you, but they're also kind of diligencing the lead investor, right? They're trying to determine how much does this lead investor actually know about the space, how well can they diligence this company, because you're kind of leaning on their diligence to validate whether you should actually come into that round or not. And so I think, it's less about the ticket size. I would say if they're coming, I don't know, if they're writing you like $1,000 check in a $2 million round.
Yeah, it doesn't.
And but there's no hard and fast where they have to take 50% or anything like that. I want to say maybe on average it's at least 25% of the round typically, but there's no real rules around it. It's just sort of enough for it to be a meaningful amount for that investor and for the round, but then also, the rest of the investors are going to be trying to figure out how well does it fit into their thesis.
And plus, you usually give them a board seat too. So that's super important because this is a conversation. It's like, what else besides cash are you bringing to the table? If you're taking my board seat, you better bring it. So don't give up board seats just for nothing. Yeah. Any thoughts on leads?
Be very selective.
Yeah. For sure. Very selective.
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
It's mostly just for education for the maybe male allies. I'm curious, and I think this is actually about a leadership question. So, you know, as women in powerful positions, leadership positions, you get to sometimes make the choice between winning or being right. And so to use your scenario, Alina, where you described using sports to connect with your male colleagues, I would say you chose the winning path. Like, you didn't necessarily want to be right, you just didn't want to lose that opportunity, right? Being right would have maybe looked like that male counterpart trying to relate with you instead, right? Or like recognizing that you might come from a different perspective. And so I sometimes wonder, for at least for my female colleagues, like how they balance what is the right time to win versus what is the right time to be right. And
it's a great question. It is a balance.
Yeah.
I think any relationship, it's like a marriage. Like, do you want to get things done or you want to be right? So it's like you pick your battle. You pick your battles and you navigate. And I think it's the same from male or female. It's just like, it doesn't like with, so I have 2 male partners, right? And 3 of us not always agree. It's usually 2 versus 1 kind of, and it depends. And I just like, okay, does it worse for me to actually stick to my ground right now and not agree with this concept? Or I can find a way to kind of compromise a little bit, or I can just let it go. So I'm like definitely prioritizing what's important at this point. And they do the same. They know what I'm passionate about. They know what I am like completely, absolutely not. Like my favorite phrase, and maybe it was Taylor Swift, I don't know, but no is a full sentence. And I said it a couple times, and because I said no and I didn't follow up with why, people are just like, and I'm like, oh, it was a full sentence. There is no it's a no. And so like when you do take those positions, I think yes, unfortunately we need to have like picking our battles. Then it's leadership too. When you have a big team and you're a party pooper on everyone's ideas, that will never work. So you need to choose what you're doing. And sports for me is like just easy. I'm not from US. I cannot talk about, oh, I grew up in Philly, like everyone grew up in Philly, and talk about the streets I can't, like there's nothing for me to relate. I'm like, I didn't go to US schools and colleges. I don't have all of that. I'm from Russia, and we will not talk about Putin for 15 minutes. So what can I do? It's just easy, right? So you navigate, you're building, it's like to get to your goal. So it's I think it's similar to a lot of people. It's not like female versus male. You navigate that, but you stick to something that's really important to you and you really believe in it, and then you compromise on things and listening. Maybe I'm wrong actually. It's like why are you feeling that strongly about that? Can you explain your position? And I will explain mine, and then we'll figure it out. So it's like communication most of the time.
I think for me it's 2-pronged. I think there's a frequency issue, so I also have 2 male partners, they're sitting right here. And I will say I often want to win. Like I don't really, I often want to be right. I don't care about winning internally because we work together so closely that for me, it would be grating if I had an issue that I kind of just was hitting every day. I was like, oh, do I really have to give this up again and again and again? And so I think it's almost like a frequency, right? Like if it's going to burn you out, if it's going to wear you down, if it's going to be something that's going to like really get to you so that you don't have the energy to do the things that you actually care about and want to do, then I think it's worth it. And then there's this huge middle where you just want to win. And then there's like the other end of the spectrum for me, which is very value driven, right? Like if you win, but then there's just something that you've done or given up or just allowed to happen that you're going to regret later, that's to me sort of where I put my foot down again. So it's almost more on this like 2 ends of the spectrum where one is like the frequency. Is this something that's going to wear me down, that's going to like draw energy from me, so I can't do the things that I want to do in the way that I want to do them. And then mostly I want to win, and then my values. So I feel like those are the two approaches that I take.
I guess my spectrum is a little bit more on the risk and reward, which I always have my risk hat on. What is the minimal amount of risk with the right reward? But taking it back, what is the final outcome that you want out of this? So I do a lot of family meetings for our clients, for the family office. Is really going back to that mission statement and the guiding principles. So I think once you've crafted something like that, it's just a much, much easier tone and cadence in the conversation, just because it's not about winning. It's about being able to achieve what that purpose, what we had set forth in the beginning of this meeting. So, and it makes it a lot easier to be able to, not necessarily, you're not debating anymore, because we go back to that purpose-driven statement that we made, that this is what we want to accomplish today. So what is that outcome that we want as a group? From based on that outcome, what path will we take with the least amount of, you're going to get resistance, but also the least amount of risk, because that risk exposure can be very costly to a family, so, or to a founder like yourself. So I think it's the balance between the risk and the reward, but making sure that you do have the right guiding principles along the way, making that decision.
Spoken like a true financial advisor.
But did use the word winning? Like when I think of those types of disputes that might happen or difference of opinions, like I do think that it's on me to actually go and sell somebody. Like if I'm gonna win this, I need to change your opinion. And I think I have a little easier time of saying if I lost this, it's because it was on me for not being able to change the way that you were thinking and bring enough evidence, whether that's evidence-based or value-based, to change your opinion on something.
Good question.
Great question.
Good one. Anyone else? All right. Well, I just want to thank the panelists for coming all the way from Bend and LA and Napa, and so thank you all. I appreciate it. Big round of applause.